Hello, friends and nonprofit leaders. Laura Zelke here, your happy host of the Your Nonprofit Life podcast. Now, can I share something personal with you? Many of you know that my background includes a Bachelor of Arts degree in religion and a Master of Divinity in Archaeology and Biblical Studies. Well, I recently had the opportunity to interview one of our members at the Nonprofit Leadership Lab who shares my love of theology and passion for elevating the voices of women, especially minority and marginalized women in Christianity. In this podcast, you're going to meet the Reverend Young Lee Hertig. She's the co-founder and executive director of ISAC, the Innovative Space for Asian American Christianity and Asian American Women on Leadership, or AAWOL. She's also the editor-in-chief of ChristianityNext and the author of The Tao of Asian American Belonging, a Yinist Spirituality. Did you catch that? She literally wrote the book on Asian American Christianity because there wasn't one. I can't wait to read it. Her book lifts up the voices of female Asian Americans in Christian ecological theology. She coined the term Yinist in the 90s to name the nameless Asian American feminism. Her organization is progressive, intersectional, and holistic. You all know my background, and I was basically fangirling the entire time. We have such an amazingly diverse group of nonprofit leaders that we support. They are incredible human beings, and Young just totally filled my tank. Also, she loves the lab and said our resources are what helped her get out of the catch-22 of not being able to raise money for her 15-year-old organization. Wow. I've been on cloud nine since I interviewed Young. Just to have the opportunity to interview someone like this, to hear her share her own journey in her own words into the nonprofit sector, you're going to be inspired and motivated when you hear why they changed the name of their organization without losing the acronym ISAC. I can't wait for you to meet the Reverend Young Lee Hertig, co-founder and executive director of ISAC, the Innovative Space for Asian American Christianity. Hey, have you ever wished you could hear some good news for a change? Well, I might have just what you've been hoping for. Welcome to Your Nonprofit Life, where we remove our rose-colored glasses and explore what leaders are actually doing to move their nonprofits from messy to thriving without burning out in the process. I'm Laura Zelke, Director of Member Experience for the Nonprofit Leadership Lab. Join me each week to explore the ups, downs, and whoopsie daisies of your nonprofit life. Let's get started. All right, and just like that, here we are. So, Young, it is so great to see you again, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to be a guest on the Your Nonprofit Life podcast and video cast. And thank you so much. Now, you're in Los Angeles, right?
Yes, it's 80 degrees, sunny.
Oh, that's not too bad. We've had this heat wave going across the United States. We are recording this in June, and I've been working really hard. This is all the podcasts for the rest of the year. So it just dawned on me that I'm wearing kind of a tank top, and this might come out in November. No. But if it does, it does. And then people can make fun of me. I have to tell you this story. So about, I don't know, maybe it was a year ago, we had our local weather station on, and our weather woman is very buff and just tan and lovely and very thin. And she was doing like a forecast of snow, and she had on a tank top. And it was just this juxtaposition. I thought, it's winter. What is she doing? Like, it just didn't make sense. And now here I am doing the same thing. So there you go. So Young, at the very beginning, I would have given kind of a brief introduction to what ISAC does, but if you could just kind of give us in a nutshell, what does your organization do? And also, it's ISAAC. Do you call it ISAC, or do you usually say the whole name?
Oh, ISAC. Everything simplified.
And what does your organization do?
We are pretty bold. We raise up the next generation of spiritual leaders by providing intersectional learning spaces that bridge the academy, church, and community. Holy cow.
I know. I will say that when I first had the opportunity to do our pre-interview, and it's been a couple months since we've
Yeah.
talked, I was just kind of in awe. I felt like I was fangirling the whole time, especially when you start, just listening to your story. And I can't wait to kind of bring this out of you to share with the listeners. But you are a woman who has 3 master's degrees and a PhD. You've written a book on
The Tao of Asian American Belonging.
the Tao of Asian American Belonging.
A
And
Yinist Spirituality.
so when you talk about theology, you and I both talked, with and let's just set the stage here. I only have one master's. I have a Master of Divinity from Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. And we'll talk a little bit about your degrees and where you got them and how the intersectionality is like key for what you're doing. But when we talk about theology, we were talking about how there's like a lot of the theology that you had read in college, in seminary, that I read, a lot of it was written by, no offense to our white male listeners, but most of it's written by white men. And so there's been a movement over the past, decades of other theologies coming forth, like womanist theology, which is the African American female women writing theology books, and Latinx. I don't remember mujerista, I think is what you said, right?
Mujerista.
Mujerista. But there wasn't one for Asian Americans.
Yes. Faceless, nameless.
And so you said, I'll write that book. And then you did. And I'm so excited about that because I want to share that, and I'll put links to that in the show notes. But before we get to talking about your organization, I want to talk about your journey into the nonprofit sector and how you actually came to be a co-founder at Isaac. And can you kind of start us back, like maybe back when you went to college and you were starting on your educational journey? Where were you living, and how did that all, come to the fore for you?
You've got all night. Let me give you a short version. You listed my 3 masters and 1 PhD. I needed counseling. So when I couldn't find counselor nearby in Seoul at the time, I decided to go it for myself. So while studying psychology, huge tank-occupied campus, and we had a dictator who slaughtered so many people in the South called Gwangju. And that person was given a sanctuary by U.S. 8th Military Army in Seoul. So he was a killer. And in that context, what does Western copy psychology book do to this kind of a horrible context of Seoul at the time? I'm talking about 80s. Oh, even mid 70s, I think. And that's when I decide, well, how does healing take place when psychology and spirituality are divorced? They used to be one, soul care. So when there's no integrative and intersectional knowledge readily available, I approach piecemeal approach. So I did manage to finish counseling psychology degree at Yonsei University. And then I had problem with God and the way God was packaged by patriarch. that excluded women's voices and women's experiences. So I studied theology in St. Paul, Minnesota, because I happened to run into the president and his wife who showed up to register international, 1 million people gathering in Seoul. And when I began studying theology in St. Paul, Minnesota, yes, General Baptist Seminary, Bethel Theological Seminary, all the classes end up in dead German men. So then I started asking another question: how come Korean Americans in the local Presbyterian church, their questions and their realities are excluded from all these classes? And when I raised questions to the faculty, they said, it's for you to find out. We have no clue. What are you asking about? And I said, okay, I'll figure it out myself. What are the relationships between the gospel and culture? Why so many cultural group and people are excluded in this theological dish? So I wanted to pursue that and went to Fuller because they have script psychology, theology, and back then world mission, that focuses on culture and the gospel. And there, upon graduation, I became a faculty. And I thought, yes, womanist voice was rising at the time in American Academy of Religion annual conference. And there's a feminist tribe, a womanist tribe, Muerista tribe, and Asian Americans are invisible, we are faceless, nameless, be submerged, or what? And it's through the permission of Fritjof Capra, physicist, quantum physicist book, The Tao of Physics, that gave me ample permission to entertain and engage Taoism as a philosophy, to systematize or generate different kind of knowledge, theological construction. And guess what? It is progressive white folks who love it. My Asian Americans resist. We don't want to be ghettoized. Do you know what I mean about internalized ism?
Mhm.
When white folks go to, feng shui and produce interior designing and all of that, it sells. But when we
Mhm.
talk about Asian cosmology by somebody who looked like me, then my own people think that's ghettoizing. We don't want to be double marginalized. It's changing though.
Yeah. I bear witness to your journey, in theological education, in back when I went in the early, late 80s, early 90s. It, like you said, dead German men. I mean, if your last name ended in MANN,
Yeah.
then we knew you were someone. And it's kind of funny because when we in Greek, I was the only female in my classes, in college in the religion major department, and we all had nicknames for each other. And so my friend Keith Chesterman, we called him Keith Chestermon, like Boltmon,
Yeah.
Consulmon, all
Yeah.
the Mons. So we had Mon, and different people had different nicknames, and they called me Hey Mon because Hey is the feminine article in Greek. And so I had this nickname, and now my name on social media is the Z Woman with two N's. And so it goes back to when I met my husband. He spells his the Z Man with two N's, and so I'm like, okay, well, I'll be the Z Woman with two N's, but now it's like the Z Woman. I have that mod in all my social media and everything. But yeah, when what I love about what you're sharing, Young, is that you actually had the gumption to question, why are we only reading these dead German theologians, you know, and it's nothing against them. They contributed greatly to an understanding of the Bible, but it's like, where are the female authors? And I think I started to have a little bit of that awakening in me when I was in seminary, but it was quashed down because that's a denomination that doesn't really, you know, they'll educate you, but they won't hire you as a female. Okay, at least that's what it was like when I was part of it.
We'll take your tuition.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I won't even go there.
I just wanted to insert, Laura, if you don't mind, that this Yinist concept, Taoism as a cosmology, is more relevant today than ever as we are facing climate crisis that really covers not just gender, but also Mother Earth and planet Earth. So I remember talking to Rosemary Reuter when she coined the term ecofeminism. I told her the minute Chinese cosmology, the minute we say yin, it even comes not just gender, it's so comprehensive that it covers the nature and even food.
I mean, the fact that you even talked to Rosemary Ruther is, you know, like I said, I'm just kind of fangirling here. And so, okay, so we probably ought to get back to you, to your story here. And what I want to know, so you got a degree, you have your 3 master's degrees, you have a theology degree from Bethel, and you did your psychology degree in Seoul.
Seoul, yeah.
And then you went to Fuller, and Fuller was kind of where it all kind of started coming together. Is that it, or you?
I chose Fuller because of my passion to integrate what should have not been split off. So having 3 schools there, group psychology, theology, and culture, which was world mission back then, my passion was to integrate all 3 schools. And, you know, they allow me to have 3 committee members from all 3 schools. And my mentor, Paul Hebert, who is no longer with us, was an amazing, I mean, he had physics degree as well. So he knew exactly what I was talking about.
And is Fuller where you got your PhD then?
Yes, I had another master's there and then PhD, master's in cultural anthropology. And
oh my gosh, I'm so jealous, but we'll just set that aside. Tell me what your thesis was on.
The role of power in Korean immigrant family and church. And I think my breakthrough in doing that thesis dissertation was methodology. Once again, by the time you do lit review, and then out of literature lit review, you come up with a thesis or problem statement, and then you delete the data that doesn't fit into your thesis. The problem that I ran into with that approach was lit review, there's not much written about immigrant family and church. So by the time I do lit review, it's all white-centric lit. And out of that, I have to manipulate the data if that doesn't fit. So what I did is I was more faithful to the data. 10 years of working in the church with the second gen, and third generation. And out of that, it's called the grounded theory method or action research method, that you start with a verbatim and then you kind of categorize out of the themes that are repetitious. And once those categories saturate, then you begin to do lit review and see which literature fit into what you found from the data. So it's kind of a reversal or upside down approach.
Yeah. Is that, Are you familiar with Brene Brown at all?
Yes, Brene Brown's.
Okay, so she does that same kind of research, right?
Right.
I think it's the same kind, because I remember reading in one of her books where she goes and explains um, the process. It sounds the same, and so really, you're a pioneer in this Asian American Christian theology, and I just want to just sit here and learn from you. Tell me how you went from. I mean, this is very academic. Okay, so very, very academic world. Teaching courses, writing your dissertation, creating this well-rounded understanding of what's missing, and what I really love is you're saying these things should have never been separated. Do you real quick, sorry, this is like a little rabbit trail, but do you think they got separated at the Enlightenment, or when do you think the break happened where things got separated?
Enlightenment paradigm. That's how all the seminary curriculum was divided.
Right. That's what I was thinking too, because that right when you get to the Enlightenment is when you start having all these German theologians writing their systematic theologies and doing all of that.
Practical theology.
And do you think that prior to that, it was still integrated?
I'm not quite sure because I'm not a church historian.
Okay.
But when I read some of the Catholic literature, prior to Protestant Reformation, I see Catholicism more in tune with the nature. They call it natural theology.
Yeah. So yeah, I was going to say it's around there's that time, and you have, especially in the 1800s, when, and this is later, but specifically when you've got Darwin's theory of evolution coming on, you've got Sigmund Freud becoming published and popular, Karl Marx, like everything started really getting very fragmented. In fact, I think that's what kind of catalyzed the fundamentalist movement in the early 1900s, right? As they were grasping for, like, we have to have things that we believe, and trying to do that as a reaction.
You call it fragmented. I'm saying reductionistic. I think, therefore I am. And as if human being is, only but thoughts.
Only mind.
Neurobiology these days discovered what ancient Chinese believed, that mind, body, and spirit are intertwined. They are not separate. And we're talking about even cellular memories these days. So it is all scientifically proven now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we could just talk for hours about this stuff. I'm already thinking about Paul and some of his letters in the New Testament, and the dualistic body, dualistic, and the body. Yeah, but we'll leave that. I keep saying we're going to leave that, and then I keep coming back on these rabbit trails. I hope people enjoy listening to this, because I'm enjoying the conversation. I just love learning about this. So again, this all academic. How did you go from academia to running a nonprofit? And was that just something that you just started, or how did that all come about?
I think I was born to raise a question. So I don't dichotomize academic stuff with what Isaac as a nonprofit is doing. We are creating and generating missing links in knowledge activism. So I really think bridging the academy, church, and community would benefit all those three entities. When church does their own thing, academy does their own thing, and community is clueless about what these two entities are doing, we lose. All of us lose when they are separated out. Intersectional space of learning can be more holistic. we address why in the world gender equality and equity issues are not being addressed from the church and from the pulpit. So we basically create an alternative space, what I call a third space. In Chinese concept, third means synthetical space. It's a synthesis, dialectical, thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. So, intersectional learning space means that third space. And we are not under any umbrella, but we can work with everybody, therefore. So basically, we've been on a quest to generate Asian American knowledge because, if 30 something woman says, I'm a pioneer, something is really wrong. That means they have no clue what the previous generations has done. So there's a disparity, and that's why we need to bridge, because constructing bridge or pioneering, each generation pioneering is exhausting. It's labor intensive. When they can walk on the bridge, why do you try to build a bridge? And this is because the knowledge educational system does not include our history, our people's legacies.
Yeah, and you're so right. So taking this from invisible to visible,
Mhm.
and creating this third space where it is safe to have conversations
Mhm.
about everything holistically. And I'm listening to you, just like, I'm so amazed at your clarity that you see things. You said you were born to ask a question. You have a gift of seeing where things should not be apart and should be together. And one of my probably pet peeves and soapboxes is, like, in the denomination that I was raised in,
Mhm.
the divorce of academics and the church.
Practice. Mhm.
Almost to the point that the church looked down on anyone who was in academia,
Mhm.
or demonized them as,
Mhm.
being too liberal, or, not taking the Bible seriously, or whatever. And almost like this infighting. And then because of that, also pulling away from the culture in the neighborhood that you're in. And the thought of bringing it all back together, it just feels beautiful, and it feels right.
Mhm.
And it feels like if we did get the academics back into the church, then we would have a lot more clarity around what is being taught in the scriptures, and the cultural context of it, and how to extrapolate and understand that, and have it infuse the work that we're doing in the community, right?
Yes.
So tell me, let's talk a little bit about Isaac, and what was the original name? Because I know you had mentioned to me that you changed the acronym, and I want to talk a little bit about that. But what was it originally? Like, how long have you been around? And what was it originally? Yeah. And how did it change?
It's hilarious. I was with one of the board members at someone else's gala. And at the table, one person asked, so what is Isaac? And she was really having a hard time. She was rather new, mind you, but she just could not spell out our mission. And by the time she tried to even finish the name, people dozed off, you know? So original name, I didn't create that name, but the Institute for the Study of Asian American Christianity. All the good intentions are there. But when it comes to branding and communicating to people who are out there, not in a circle, then people got bored and they wouldn't even have patience to hear the full name being spelled out. But we kept the acronym Isaac, but the board member and we kind of grappled with, and then we came up with the innovative space for Asian American Christianity. The minute we said we spell out innovative space, then people do not turn away.
Their ears just perk right up and they start going, innovative space, tell me about this.
Yes.
I love that. And so how long have you been around? And can you tell us a little bit about what your organization does as a nonprofit?
So this year we'll be celebrating the 15th anniversary. Even though our anniversary falls in April, we're going to celebrate on October 26th to fit into planners' schedule and everything. So that's in the making. And for the first time, I don't have to get involved. There's a fund development committee. And they are, excited. And they said they're going to do a silent auction. And I said, isn't that laborious? Oh, don't worry, we'll handle it. So I don't know much about the detail, but it's in the making. So 15 years. Many times I felt like I was called to make brick without much straws. For 15 years, if I was handing out sandwiches in the park and feeding the homeless, I would have gotten more funds. Direct service, right? But we are in a business of tackling the 9/10 of the iceberg rather than that, what's on the surface. Because how do you know what you know? And who owns the knowledge? And from whose questions theology and Christianity were packaged? Can we make room bigger? Can other voices come and be incorporated and engaged? You would think that that's quite normal, but it's been a struggle. And yet, when you hear, I'm a little bit Pentecostal as well. So when the Holy Spirit nudges your heart, you just cannot deny. And, finally I said, God, you owe me. I've given my life. And I've been trying to make bricks. People come and, drink from our well and disappear. And unlike the mainstream, especially faith community among Asian American, philanthropy, that value is so scarce. That's something we have to really bring change. So we promote gender equality and equity. After how many years, still, gender equality in the church is in the back burner. So that's what we've been shouting from the mountaintop.
So do you have is this a physical location that people come to take classes? Or is it a organization that's doing a lot of, are you doing a lot of writing online and speaking, or how is it an innovative space?
So all of the above.
Elaborate.
Okay. Now intersection means both hybrid, I guess. So, thanks to Lilly Endowment, we have Pastoral Lab that I designed. And initially, I envisioned that we would mentor Asian American women faith leaders face to face. So we have Orange County cohort that's going to begin meeting face to face finally, and Los Angeles cohort, and then online cohort. More people after the Atlanta shooting. Who would have guessed that when we were launching this program, that there's a surge of anti-Asian hate crimes and the Atlanta shooting, So we decide to meet the needs. So many people, women from all different states applied. We just could not turn them down, although we turned down 50% because of capacity issue. So we've got 3 cohorts running right now. And then we'll be addressing, we launched One Breath webinar addressing mental health issue among Asian Americans during after pandemic and all these hate crime against Asian Americans. We barely touched the surface. So Myung Yoon Hammer, she is a family therapist at Fuller faculty. We will be featuring her as a keynote speaker at the gala in October. And on July 28th, we're going to have some kind of a one breath worship lament and release, marking our collective grief and releasing our grief so that we don't continually wound ourselves. And what else? And reflecting on the image of God, like honoring God and honoring the image of God in us. So people are registering right now. That's on online, both Facebook and Zoom, to collectively mark what we've been through. And with some amazing worship musicians, they made their own music and we'll be featuring them as well.
I'm so intrigued by the One Breath. So you have your gala, and the One Breath is separate from the gala,
Right. Gala is on October 16th.
right?
And One Breath will be on July 28th, 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Well, I'll put a link to this in the on the show notes page, and I will see if we can't get this podcast out before then, because I feel like one thing that we're, especially, I will just speak for myself, in the white Christian culture, we don't have a lot of experience with real lament. And it's something that has become glaringly clear over the past few years. There's a minimization of grief, and there's a wanting to, hurry up and move on,
Right.
and not really take the time to lament. It's part of white culture, as I've been learning. And you don't know what you don't know until you know it, and then you know it. And to have an opportunity to collectively lament with our Asian brothers and sisters is just a gift. And so I definitely would like to share that with others. And what I feel so much when I listen to you speak and I hear your vision for the future and for what you're creating in your what did you call it? Yinist?
Yes, it's
Yinist
from
theology.
the Taoism Yin and Yang. I'm sure a lot of white folks know about necklace or earring with that dynamic, visual. But many American educated Asian Americans don't know what they experience from the family. They only have symbolic identity through food. They don't have the language to describe why their parents drink herbal medicine. And when their back is hurting, why they, choose to go to acupuncturist. And these are all derived from Taoism. And mind you, Einstein and Carl Jung also learn from Taoism. So Yinist is something that really promotes balance. And sickness in this concept is imbalance. Cancer is imbalance, isn't it? So how do we bring equilibrium of all organs in our body, if not for our mindset? So it promotes interdependent human connection, and not only among human, but also with the nature. And basically, my thesis of creating Yinist is I have observed, let's out men, or let's out white. So there's a extremism that I have observed in my teaching career. What's the difference when man on top is rotated with woman on top? There's a power abuse and control. And I have seen a lot of them in academia, coming with the two blazing guns full of entitlement. At least white male has white male guilt. So sometimes women can be more control freak because you haven't been in that position long enough. There's a perfect description of that. The premature shaman kills rather than heals.
Mm.
Shaman meaning healer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think radicalizing and extreme knowledge creates identity politics. It's embedded in it. Unless it's my way, and if you don't see reality through my lens, you're out, or I don't feel safe in that space. So it's either or binary. I see a lot of problem there. But what if, like even Desmond Tutu calls it Ubuntu spirit? It's that acknowledging my welfare hinges upon your welfare. And we are in this together, and I'm noticing how foreign that concept is for Asian Americans who are mainly educated here.
Mm-hmm. I'm just taking it all in. I was thinking I'm going to have to listen to this a few times to really get all of the wisdom that you're dropping on us here.
I'll send you my book.
Oh, I'm gonna buy your book. Yeah, what I see is you're taking the pieces. What you said early on in this interview was that should have never been divorced, and bringing it back together and putting it out in a beautiful format to show what it could be. And what I see your organization doing is then helping others get the same vision. Let me ask you this, do you primarily or only work with women at Isaac? Is that your focus, or do you
No, it's not.
serve all? And do you only work with Asian women, or is it more expanded than that?
We've done our podcast. In fact, we couldn't wait around until male preachers yield their pulpit. So we are taking advantage of this digital medium. So it's called When Women Preach. That podcast is both Latina and Asian American women faith leaders we feature. And then I just finished designing another program. Having been a faculty, program designing is my strong suit. How about, I may have gotten this from Joan Gary, who knows? There's nothing new under the sun, but how to fuel your passion. I think seminary does a good job, cultivating people's passion and all that. But how does one go from A to Z? Financial competency. How do you write business plan? How do you write a grant? Or how do you even talk to funders? How do you talk to media? You know, so I learned a lot from, your organizations. And it'll be bilateral, Latina and Asian American women cohort will be rolling out if funding comes through next year.
Yeah, well, I hope it does. It's filling a necessary and huge gap for us in theology. You're filling a gap that shouldn't even be there. And I had to laugh when you said when the men will give up their pulpit or however you said it. Yeah, it
You know,
it's a, go ahead.
let me be also positive. We've seen more male allies because when it's a gender exclusion and gender oppression issue, what good does it do? Only women gather. We need to include men. Men has to labor. So, we work with, right now, I asked two male, Asian American male, to collect Asian American church database in the whole United States, up to 6,000. And then following year, we'll do about up to 600, if not 400, return of survey on the status of Asian American women in Asian American churches. I want to underscore that so many ordained Asian American women serve in aging Caucasian churches. So speaking of split, they have to choose, forego ethnicity for gender equality to exercise their full gifts. So they'd rather go to aging white, denomination or churches than serving their home church or their own ethnic churches. So that's why we want to document and collect the data. What are the status of Asian American women leaders in your church? And if their bylaws says women are precluded, that is the data. So men will be working on that for us.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what your data shows. And you're doing this across all denominations?
Yes.
Or
Yes.
Yeah.
Or even non-denomination.
Yeah, right. I just think it's interesting. And so not only are you offering courses with your different cohorts that you have, and I'm thrilled that you have I'm thrilled that you have an online cohort as well, because is that something that did that come out of the pandemic where you kind of had to pivot to online? Do you think you're going to keep that moving forward?
Yeah, I don't think we've been pitched for online. It just happened that so many other states, even Australia, Canada, and then after we announced that they were not admitted, they were banging on my doors. So the need and the demand is great.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you need more capacity because the need is there. So
exactly.
You need more, yeah.
And that capacity building is on my forefront.
Yes, and I can see why, because you are poised for exponential growth, really, in this. And I feel like you're bringing it all together, that like we talked earlier, the intersectionality of all of it and bringing it to the forefront and giving it a name, naming what the problem is, and then modeling out the solution and showing how it all comes together theologically is very healing. And I really do hope that for those, this isn't a religious podcast. It's a podcast for nonprofit leaders to be exposed. That we do this for our members, but we have a lot of people listen who are not members of the lab. But it's something that should be educational. For my goal is that it's educational and inspirational, and that we're motivated, like you said, fueling that passion.
Yeah.
For me, Young, this conversation has been fuel for me for the work that I'm doing. And I just want to thank you for sharing so freely with me and with the listeners what your journey was like and how you've really, you're so clear on what your focus is and what you're trying to do. You're setting Isaac up to be an organization that's going to outlast you.
Yes.
It's sustainable. And that's what you're working on right now, is getting that structure in there so that it's sustainable and can continue to grow and do the good, important work that you all are doing. And what would you say would be the best way for someone to get in touch with you and or your organization?
So we have a Facebook and we have Instagram, at Isaac Fellowship. And our website, we regularly update. And, we have a journal as well that people can subscribe. We invested, we still need to break even, but it's called ChristianityNext. So part of bridging the academy, church, and community, once again, my mentor taught me, what you speak disappears, but what you write will outlast you. So it's a grueling work. Sometimes my eyes get hurt, but we have this, once again, we changed the name, SANX, Society of Asian North American Christianity, and 20-something younger generation said, is that antidepressant? So that's when I thought, okay, time to change the name. So now it's Christianity Next. And we are all in the Library of Congress and EBSCO.
Wow.
It's enrolled.
And how long have you had the journal?
We are working on the 6th issue now. Politics and public theology, Asian American theology, political theology, and public theology.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm telling you, I just am so grateful I just still can't believe that I get to interview you. So thank you.
Laura, thank you for understanding.
I love it. I'm just okay, I need to get the journal. I need to subscribe to the journal. I need to get the book. I need to listen to this podcast and follow your journey and support it and be part of it. And so I will definitely put links to all the things on the show notes page. And Young, I just want to thank you again for taking the time out today to interview with me and do this podcast. And I'm just so honored to be in your presence and to learn from you. And I want to thank you for that. It's a gift. And that's really kind of what I have to say there. I'm just kind of like, oh.
You know what? The feeling is mutual, and I thank you. I learned so much from, Nonprofit Leadership Lab and all the tangible stuff. Even when we are doing press release, I went to your archiver and okay, what are the do's and don'ts and what are the tips? And it was right there. So I want your listeners to know your mission really jumped at me. I mean, your organization helped me to really break catch 22. especially as a small nonprofit.
Mhm.
How do I break through this catch-22? It takes money to make money, right?
Right, right.
And your library is so rich, what the seminary does not equip seminarians with. So I thank you and
Yeah.
John, and I'm eating it up too.
Well, I just thank you for that. And like I said, this is fueling for me to have this conversation with you, because for me it's not a job. It's a I don't
Life's
know,
calling.
calling. Yeah. And I'm so grateful to be able to serve so many amazing leaders in the nonprofit sector. So thank you for that. And we're going to go ahead and call this done.
Yeah,
And I will see you in the village.
I look forward to meeting you sometime face to face.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. To access the show notes or share feedback on this podcast and link over to our socials, visit our website at yournonprofitlife.com. That's yournonprofitlife.com. And hey, if you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you're going to love The Village. It's our exclusive online community where we take what we're learning in the Nonprofit Leadership Lab and apply it. We take it to the next level with live Q&As, boot camps, online book clubs, and legit support from experts committed to helping you extend your nonprofit life. By the way, since we're just getting started, it would mean the world to us if you'd subscribe to the podcast and leave a great review on iTunes. The reviews will help us get the podcast in front of more people as we try to take the whole sector from messy to thriving. See you next time.